Well, welcome to 2025, everybody. I'm happy to welcome veteran journalist, political analyst Mark Halperin to kick off the discussion series for the year. I think, given the overwhelming response, Mark, in registrations, people know who you are as having had top jobs in print and TV legacy media, as a cable host and best-selling author, and what I hope to get to at the end, somebody who's building a 21st century media empire with all of these interesting new tools that really do seem to be realigning and I'd say based upon 2024 starting to have an impact broadly, which is pretty cool. I'm hoping to get to the concierge coverage program you've got, which I know because I've participated in it. I subscribe to it. I see senior officials, past, present, probably future, from the Biden and Trump orbits and governors and CEOs. It's pretty cool. We got 45 minutes. I got 20 questions for Mark Halperin, but welcome.
Bruce, thank you. Thank you for the very nice introduction. You read it just the way I wrote it, which I appreciate. So thank you.
Let's start with the election. You saw this coming. It was pretty clear reading both, at least between the lines, if not almost directly. And I don't think your readers were surprised by how the presidential election turned out. We've had a couple of weeks. Was it Trump's strength or Harris's weakness? Was it cultural backlash? Was it the economy stupid? And could an athlete of Bill Clinton's caliber have overcome being an incumbent with only 107 days?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. We're never going to know how Donald Trump would do against a fellow thoroughbred presidential candidate. If you look at the people who ran against him for the nomination in 16, in the nomination in 24, and in the general elections in 16, 20, and 24, he never ran, in my view, against someone the caliber of Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, or Barack Obama. And I was just talking to a Bush person today, and I said, they were talking about whether Clinton could beat Trump today, vintage Clinton. And I said, well, we'll never know, but you got to look at the weakness of the people he ran against. I remember in 20, after Trump lost, and Biden people said, well, we hope Trump's the nominee next time because Trump can never beat Biden. And I said, why? They said, because not a single person who didn't vote for Trump in 20 would possibly vote for him in 24. And of course, millions did, even after what I call the big four, January 6th, fake electors claiming the election was stolen, and the phone call to Zelensky. He's done other things that I think you could criticize, but I call those the big four. He still won. I think why he won was primarily weakness on four things that I point to on the Democratic side. One is Joe Biden had no business running for president in 2020, let alone in 2024. And he left people incredulous, Democratic voters, independents, Republicans. So Biden's weakness and Biden's decision to get out late. Two, Kamala Harris. I believe she shouldn't have run. She should have passed on it because now her team says, well, she could never have won the race. So if she couldn't have won the race, she shouldn't have run. We can talk more about why else I think she was a weak candidate, but that's two. Three is the Biden-Harris record. No one has ever won with the approval rating that Joe Biden had. No incumbents won re-election. And you look at primarily inflation, the border, cultural issues, and immigration and Afghanistan. That was just a huge burden for the incumbent party. And the incumbent party chose to replace the incumbent with the only other person who would have to defend that same record. Lastly, I think James Carville said it was all the economy. I think that Ronald Reagan talked about the three-legged stool of the Republican Party, where they had an advantage during his time over the Democrats: national security, economics, and cultural issues. And I think the Democratic Party, objectively, is further to the left on those three things than they've been in any of our lifetimes. I'm an objective journalist. You'll hear me say things today that are pro and anti-Trump, pro and anti-Democrat. But I think it's just objectively true that on those issues, the Democratic Party is far to the left. And national security is a little screwy because what does it mean to be to the left now? Trump has really flipped the script on that because his popularity on foreign policy, I believe, is basically talk loudly, carry a big stick, but end the forever wars. And I think the Democrats are on the wrong side of that. But on economics, on cultural issues, I think they've moved way too far to the left to win an election. So those are the four reasons I think the Democrats lost it. And I think those are more potent than Trump winning it. Although I will say, Trump is the second best presidential candidate I've ever covered after Bill Clinton. And I think he was masterful. And his legal team was masterful. And his comms team were masterful. And his political team was masterful in doing all the things they needed to do. Okay. Lastly, I know I'm using up way too much time on this question. The incumbents usually win unless they're really incompetent. And this was an incompetent for both policy and politics incumbent administration.
Yeah. Well, thorough answer, which is good. And so many of these themes are in the pieces you write. So it's fun hearing you articulate stuff that I've seen you write about. I will note question number 20, which I do want to get to, is how's your dad doing? Because I interned for him a long time ago, but it's a long way off. Number two,
Yeah.
what surprised you most? You saw so much of this coming, but usually every election has a couple of things. Wow, I didn't see that coming. What do you feel like surprised you?
I'll be shorter in the rest of the answers, but I thought the first question was kind of the big one.
Oh yeah.
Um, I'd say two things that mostly surprised me. Number one, that the Harris campaign didn't adjust. They didn't do anything when it was clear that she was behind. They didn't do anything to adjust. I don't think I'll ever really understand that. And then second, it was, people sometimes give me credit for saying leaning pretty hard into the notion that Trump would win. I don't understand how people were surprised by that. The data was available. If you knew how to read the public data and you had access to any private data, I think it's just sort of surprising that people didn't go into election day much more confident about a Trump victory than most people seem to be.
Yeah, it's interesting. If we get time here, I'd be interested in how she might have adjusted. My impression is to the not thoroughbred point earlier. I'm not sure there's anything she could have done. It doesn't mean you couldn't have played the cards a little bit better, but boy, I don't know what she tried, going on The View. Turned out that was the hardest question of the cycle. She tried going on Tough Media where she actually did better, but it didn't move the needle. Um, we've had on this I don't know what it called program Substack, both Patrick Ruffini and Rui Teixeira, and both of them wrote great books, pretty well aligned. The theory is we're amidst another, every couple of generations you have a realignment among the parties, and they see the GOP maybe becoming a multiracial working class party. Rui suggests a long time, I'm a long time liberal analyst, but that the Dems have lost the working class. They've kind of traded in the factory floor for the faculty lounge. I'm interested. Do you also see a broader realignment, or do you feel like the politics of the last decade are so unique to Donald Trump that we don't know where the parties will stand in 2028?
I lean much more towards the latter point of view. Trump is such a singular figure, and again, such a talented candidate. You look at the large fields of candidates he ran against in 16 and 24 for the nomination, and people touted those fields as very strong. I dissent. I don't have anything personal against the people who ran against him. It's about 20 people. I don't think any of them are close to as talented as Trump. And it's easy to try to mimic Trump, but I'll be curious to see how the party does. It's not just about espousing policies that the working class like, although that's part of it, a big part of it, on immigration, on the economy, on the forever wars. It's also a level of authenticity. Um, in 2015, I did a focus group in New Hampshire, and a 25-year-old secretary said she really liked Trump. And she said, the reason I like Trump is he's just like me. And that stays with me to this day. I cite it all the time, even though now it was a decade ago. I pulled her aside afterwards and asked her if she owned a building on Fifth Avenue she'd named for herself. And she said no. She's not just like Trump in almost any way, but that's how she felt. And so you think about why does Trump have appealed to working class voters of all races? Part of it is policy, part of it is style, but part of it is a ability to instill in them confidence that he cares about them, he's thinking about them, he's fighting for them. I don't see a lot of Republicans who I think have that same ability, and I think the right Democrat against the wrong Republican in 2028 could swing the thing right back, and Democrats could become the party of the working class again under those circumstances, assuming the right Democrat coupled it with some policies that actually, particularly in the economy and foreign policy, that actually had appeal to the working class.
Yeah, I think you wrote, because I emailed myself because I thought it was such a good line, the McDonald's East Palestine garbage truck playbook. I thought that was your line, which is that very point. I would have added UFC to it, but amazingly, a billionaire with his name on buildings managed to get Hal to seem like the average regular person better. People kind of ridiculed the McDonald's stunt or the garbage truck stunt, but they seemed, if you took away the other baggage, they were really good political events.
Yeah. So that's in public. Somebody told me a story the other day. They were in a meeting with Trump and there was a note taker in the meeting. And Trump went around the room and asked all the policy people what they thought of some issue that they were debating. And then he asked the note taker. And the note taker said, I'm just the note taker. Trump's really want to know what the note taker thinks. He's just got a high human intelligence, and something he saw in the note taker's face made him think, I want to know what the note taker thinks. And that's the same impulse that makes him not only go to McDonald's, but be comfortable in McDonald's. It's theatrics. He's the best television producer ever elected president. Put Kamala Harris in that photo op, it just wouldn't be the same because she doesn't understand television production. And that's a big part of running for president successfully is being understanding great television production.
On to number four, we're going to the first 100 days. Were you surprised by the non-traditional Trump cabinet nominees? I mean, I've got a theory, but I'm interested in your theory. We get the Marcos and people, the Mike Waltz, the traditional types make all the sense in the world. That's who you'd expect a Republican who would pick dynamic people who campaigned for him. But then, whether it's Robert Kennedy or Tulsi Gabbard or Pete Hegseth, did you figure these are the sort of folks? I've somehow 10 years in, I still get surprised, and I'm like, wow, how do I not see it coming? I didn't. Did you?
I didn't see those particular people. Oh, well, I shouldn't say that. I didn't see Hegseth. I saw Kennedy and Gabbard. Um, Trump's big thing is they look like they're from central casting. That's his phrase. That is the ethos he uses to pick people. Every person he picked is from central casting and Trump's conception of central casting. So no, none of them surprised me. Even Matt Gaetz didn't surprise me. Here's the thing about Trump is different than other presidents and different than other political operations. Most people, most presidents, if they pick one person that controversial, it devours them. It freezes up the transition, and it's a huge thing. Trump doesn't care. Pick Matt Gaetz. Okay, no Matt Gaetz, he's gone. Trump doesn't care. He just moves on. So I still think one or more of them might not be confirmed. I think if you don't have a full appreciation for Bobby Kennedy's political appeal, I urge you to look more into it. Each one of these people, I can tell you exactly why Trump picked him. I won't spend the time to do it. But no, none of them surprised me. And I think he's got a probably better than 50% chance at this point to get all of the remaining people confirmed.
There we go. Number five is handicap. Who's not going to make it, in your opinion? Who are the three least likely in order of least likeliness?
Hegseth, Gabbard, Kennedy. Um, Even Hegseth's supporters have told me for a month, over a month, there's another big story or two coming about his past that they think will kill him. Even some of his supporters say that. Uh, I think for all three of them, it will depend on how they perform in the hearings and whether there's new information. If there's no information and they perform well, all three will be confirmed.
Okay, number six, still in the first 100 days. You know, eh, when I advise clients, a normal executive is pick a number of core priorities. Trump is moving full speed ahead in his first 100 days on everything at the same time, everywhere all at once. So, mass deportation, border reform, yes. Tariffs, yes. Massive tax reform, fast as we can, you bet. Huge spending and regulatory cuts, yes. Schedule F, full speed ahead. First, can the Washington system that you've covered for decades actually handle that many massive things all at once? And do you think Trump's theory is by moving everything all at once, the opposition is diffuse and divided? Or is his theory just chaos has always been a tailwind for him? And the more that's going on, the more that he can find opportunities.
Yes and yes. Um, you have to really avoid understanding history to believe anything but the following, which the Trump people and Trump believe. Presidents rarely do anything of significance beyond the first 150 days, 200 days. He's a unique second term president because he's been president. He had 4 years off to rest, hire a rested staff, think about who he wanted to hire, have an outside think tank that put all this stuff together. I could be wrong, but based on the available data, I think this is the most prepared presidency that I've seen. And the fact that it's a second term presidency is part of that. So I don't think I think his agenda is actually quite narrow. You listed not the full list, but I think that's actually not so much, given that they believe they need to get this stuff done by Thanksgiving, or it's going to be very difficult to do. He is a lame duck, even though it doesn't feel that way. He is a lame duck. So I think you'll be surprised at the number and scope of the executive orders. I think you'll be surprised at how quickly he moves on national security things. I believe you'll be surprised at how quickly he moves administratively on things they can do administratively, like with the border. And then I think the big question is how he does with Congress. But I don't think under the circumstances that the problem is they're trying to do too much.
I may disagree with you on how much the system can bear just based on, in '09 to 2010. I mean, everything was focused on the Affordable Care Act and healthcare. In 2011, it was the Simpson Bowles and the super committee, and the tax, each of the things that often would take up us, occupy, or, get all the oxygen out of the room on a single issue. And he's moving like six of them, which may actually play to his advantage, but that's not anybody's
Well,
playbook before.
well, I'll just say, you just think about starting a big new job. Somebody starting a big new job, okay? Big difference starting a big new job you've had before and have had 4 years to think about how to do better, and you're super psyched to have your job back after 4 years, but you're rested. You've spent the 4 years with other people preparing. You've thought about who you want to bring back in from the last time. You've met new people who you really like, and the people you're competing against are decimated as compared to 4 years ago. And you've been shot and you've lived and you feel every day is precious. Again, I'm not predicting all this is going to succeed, but that's very different. So when you go to analogs from past presidencies, they weren't experienced and rested and had 4 years off to plan. Those are, I think, the very big factors that weigh in his favor for achieving a lot of stuff.
That's all fair. And for that matter, dominating your party and having the other party in disarray to this degree are unusual.
Yeah.
It's funny, we talk about the first 100 days, but every now and then I forget he's not president already. Do you recall ever a period this quickly when the president-elect exerted more influence around the world over the news and the existing incumbent was less visible? Because I don't.
No, I mean, I'm trying to write a piece about this now, and it's difficult because I want it to be less impressionistic, and I'm trying to figure out ways to quantify it. But it's a strange confluence of, I think, at least three things. One is Trump is super aggressive and delighted to be, and remember, he's done this barely being on camera, but he wants to get it to a fast start because he knows every day is precious. Two, Biden is completely fallen off for a variety of reasons. And three is the issues that kind of organically have come up are all issues Trump really wants to move fast on. And particularly the two wars, Middle East and Russia, Ukraine. There's been opportunities there that have been presented. So I don't think there's ever been anything like this, but I'm not sure how to quantify it. But qualitatively, no doubt.
Let's move to Greenland. I assume, Mexican tariffs is about fentanyl and the border. I assume somewhat the same of annexing Canada and Panama Canals, probably to try to cut some deal where you come back and you get, it's a financial play. I don't get Greenland. I don't, they're not going to sell Greenland. We're sure as shit not going to invade Greenland. What do you think's going on with Greenland?
So Greenland has one thing that has been around forever since the Cold War, and two new things that are extremely important that caused Trump to say, "I want to change the relationship." Trump's attitude: "What's mine is mine, and what's yours we'll negotiate over." Okay. The thing that's immutable is the location. Greenland is like Okinawa, it's like Guam. On this globe on which we live, it is a unique piece of real estate where it's positioned. And it's more important now for the second thing which has changed, which is the melting because of global warming, the ability to extract minerals, the ability for China and Russia to play in those waters, the fight for supremacy in that area is really amped up from what it was before. And as you know, this is not the first time the United States has talked about acquiring it or having a different relationship. And then lastly is the minerals are more valuable than they were before because of the uses that they can be put to that didn't exist before. So I think with it's the same with Canada and Panama. Trump wants to change the relationship. He wants leverage. One of, I think, Trump's greatest strengths, which his three predecessors, I think, failed in to a large extent, is how do you get leverage over Russia and China? To me, that's the most important global issue because we have lost the ability to have leverage over those two countries. Embedded in Greenland, symbolically and substantively, is potential leverage over both China and Russia that we don't currently have. And so I think it's quite natural. And there's an opening there in part because the people of Greenland are not super wedded to being part of Denmark. They're just not. They're more interested in independence. But they could be an independent country, but they cannot defend themselves. They need a national security partner. U.S. used to have a bigger military presence than we did in Greenland, but I think from an intelligence eavesdropping point of view, from a air base point of view, from a space based point of view, which is what we have there now, and from a naval point of view, it'd be great for the United States to have more of a presence there. Trump wants that. He wants the minerals, and he wants to be doing big legacy things. You will see Trump do a lot of things in this term that are meant to say, I'm reading my Wikipedia page and I'm Donald Trump, or my grandkids are reading it, and there are big legacy things in there. And getting new territory for the United States, haven't done that in a while. That's what he wants.
All right. So you got Russia, you got China, you got inflation, you got Father Time, all things he's facing that are challenges. I'm not certain the biggest challenge may not be the House Freedom Caucus and that old Hamilton song, you don't got the votes. And when I think about the Trump agenda, the biggest break to me may well just be the fact that he can't afford to lose more than two. He lost Massey on the speaker vote, which is arguably the easiest vote of the entire year for the conference, which would mean in theory he can afford to lose one other vote, and that's once he gets back to 220. Um, it seems impossible to me, but I'm interested in your take. Does he have such total control, in your opinion, even over the hell no wing of the party, that the fiscal hawks and the national security hawks and the shrink, like all those guys ultimately will bend the knee again and again?
Yeah. So I talk about this all day, and I could give you a 15-minute answer. I'm gonna give you a really short one, and then you ask me if you want more. People said, why does Trump keep picking members of the House to be in the government? Why is he reducing the margin? And the answer is you'd rather have a 1 seat margin than a 10 seat margin. Because if a 10 seat margin, everybody thinks they can form a little coalition and hold the thing up. If you got a 1 seat margin, the president can walk in the room and say, my entire presidency is on the line. The future of the Republican Party is on the line. We must all hang together or we will all hang separately. And I think they're just gonna say to them, we have to have this. No one can defect. So don't be thinking that you can defect and vote the way you want to vote and we can still win. Everyone has to vote yes. And in the Senate, it's practically the same thing. I think the big issue, there are two big issues as far as I'm concerned that don't get enough attention. One is can the speaker in particular and Trump do deals with Democrats on things like the debt ceiling and the continuing resolution in the interim before they do this big vote, or does that queer the whole thing for the Freedom Caucus to say he's a rhino, he did a deal with Democrats, we don't want to vote for Trump? I don't know about that. That's, I think, a big issue. And the other thing is they need a forcing mechanism. These people aren't going to vote that way just for Trump. They need two things. They need Trump to say, my presidency's on the line. And then they need either the debt ceiling's about to be hit or the Bush or the Trump tax cuts are going to expire. If they can get those things sequenced out, not ruin things by working with Democrats in the interim, and have a forcing mechanism for the vote, I think the one vote margin is not it's you're right, it's the biggest problem, but it's not impossible.
All right. So one of the things that I've been spending time trying to think through, and maybe I can turn it into a slide deck. That's my goal, but as it always is, um, differences between 2017 and 2025. And one of the biggest, obviously the world was at peace. Now it's not. The world was disinflationary. Now it's less so. But one of the biggest is there was no such thing as a MAGA ecosystem. Now there is a loud, aggressive MAGA ecosystem, and Musk and X are a big part of it, but not even remotely all of it, that he can, aim at, train on, and count on to go to the Senator Joni Ernsts and others and to really squeeze people in a way that didn't exist before. And I'm interested in your sense of the degree to which they'll do whatever Trump says, or sort of as we saw over the H-1B fight, whether Trump's got to stay well aligned with MAGA rhetoric. And if they perceive Trump is getting off the program, say on H-1Bs, then the MAGA ecosystem turns on him, albeit as it did in the first term temporarily.
My main analytical tool in thinking about Trump and politics generally to some extent is where are the asymmetries? Okay. The Democrats have nothing like the MAGA ecosystem. But Trump within the party, the establishment of the Republican Party, doesn't have it either. And frankly, the Freedom Caucus doesn't have it. The MAGA ecosystem is for Trump, but it's like professional wrestling. You can have a fight with somebody on the Monday episode, and then Tuesday you're friends with them again. You don't see scar tissue over the visa fight. Dust up, boom, boom, boom. Now we're back to doing other stuff. So it's an incredible asset, and I think he will be able to use it both intra-party against moderates, intra-party against the Freedom Caucus, and then when necessary against Democrats. It's extremely valuable, and it's valuable because it's organic, authentic, low cost, and very responsive to what Trump wants. The text chains of the people who run the MAGA ecosystem, that the text chains they're on with Trump people are their American history. I wish someone was saving them and let me write a book about them. They are coordinating to the degree to which people on this call in their own businesses, you should envy their level of coordination. It's 24/7, very sophisticated, very rapid.
Well, let's turn to mainstream media. I can't remember. I got today. You were on a debate with somebody that was sounds fun, but the Axios, New York Times, the Swan and Haberman theory is that Trump always did and still does care about. It's not quite page 6 anymore, but about the New York Times, about the how mainstream media is portraying him and how things appear on TV. And you have taken a little bit of the position that he cares less about legacy media than he used to. Would you expound a little bit on why you think that old theory that it's all advertised to a party of one and it's about what it looks like on cable is maybe less true?
Because they tried to put him in prison. So he cares less about what they think because they tried to put him in prison. And he has this alternative ecosystem and he knows the numbers. He loves the Today Show. He'd love to turn on the Today Show and say Donald Trump's the greatest president ever. But if they say Donald Trump's about to deport families and break up families, and Donald Trump lied about January 6th, and Donald Trump the tariffs are going to destroy America, he'll flip over to Rogan and say, well, you know what? Many more people are listening to and watching Rogan. He cares about it, but he simply is not living or dying by it. It's nuanced. It's not black and white. It's not like he doesn't care at all. But in the first term and in his life before he was president, if the New York Times or Vanity Fair was not giving him the coverage he wanted, he would say to his staff, "Oh, we got to do something about this. We got to fix it." Now he says, "F them. Let's do something else." Doesn't mean he doesn't want their love, but he's not living or dying for their love. And and I don't think he'll ever go back because he's down on it. He used to be, he didn't like the coverage, but he liked the reporters because he loves reporters. Now he actually doesn't like some of the reporters. He knows who the people are who tried to put him in prison. He does not like them.
I'm interested in whence the resistance. Right now, it's maybe at the state level, but it's very much in disarray. But if you embrace the so-called thermostatic theory of politics, when it's cold, you turn it up. When it's hot, you turn it down. The party that's out of power is where the activism and the energy comes. We saw it in Trump 1 with a lot of groups on the left. For that matter, Obama's presidency began with a Tea Party rise, ended with a MAGA rise. With Biden, we've seen the kind of the Robbie Starbuck and right of center anti-ESG, anti-DEI. All logic says to me that when you try to have mass deportations, when you're going against federal DEI and maybe government contractor DEI, when you're anti-ESG, you're going to see an effort for the resistance to kind of reorganize and come back and lean against what are perceived as excesses, which helped the resistance media last time. I'm interested in your take. Is that should one expect that to return? Would that then, as it did last time, lead to activist pressure on C-suites and businesses, or has the landscape changed inalterably?
Well, it has changed inalterably, but it does not feel to me like that's going to happen. Corporate America is sided with Trump. Okay. The legacy media is defamed. There's no obvious leaders of the Democratic Party. The donor class is 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 not fired up and ready to go. And the grassroots, I think, feels a little let down that there's no narrative explanation of how a fascist was elected president after the big four lies. So, uh, there's no permanent majority. Trump is not, he's more popular than he's ever been, but half the country detests him, and he's got these narrow majorities in Congress. So I assume the pendulum will swing, but I couldn't tell you right now a single factor that makes me tell you to say here's the green shoot for the Democrats, with the possible exception of the popularity of John Fetterman's hoodies. I cannot cite a single thing that makes me say I see where this is going. I see the Tea Party. I see the resistance because there's this fundamental shock to the culture of the left, and this is not an insignificant part of the narrative. I don't know why it took center left, center, and center right donors to universities, what happened with Palestinians and Hamas, to decide the universities were so woke they couldn't give them money. I don't know where they've been for the last 25 years because there are a lot of comparable data points. But the severing of that relationship is really fundamental to and representative of the problem they have, which is the energy in the party, to the extent there is any, is still to the left of Kamala Harris. And I'm talking to the left of Kamala Harris of 2019, not the remade Kamala Harris of 2024. The smarties in the party say our problem is we're too far left. And so how you build a movement of resistance and energy when there's no clear narrative agreement about are we too far left or are we not fighting hard enough on the left? I think it's very difficult. It will happen, but I can't tell you anything that I see now that makes me say I see the trajectory of this. Here are the moments I can tell you I anticipate in 2025 where the left and the Democrats are going to really take it to Trump. I don't see it right
By
now.
the, by the way, this is now two guests back to back mentioning Fetterman hoodies, you and Peggy Noonan. Though I think you're more of a fan of the Fetterman hoodies than the great Peggy Noonan was. So I'm with you. I don't know. I think the Dems have had and continue to have had a bit and continue amidst the civil war about who they want to be as a party, whether
Yeah.
it's culturally left or economically working class. Um, and the only thing that has kept them together and arguably papered over so they didn't have to answer the question was hatred of Trump. Do you think that undermines their ability to win back the House? Because the midterms in 2026, they only need net three, assuming it stays at 220, 215. And going back to 1946, every single midterm except 1998 and 2002
Yeah.
was more than two seats lost. Yeah, more than two seats lost by the party holding the White House. Do you see that as notwithstanding the Dems' challenge, there's just no way that the GOP holds the House, or are Trumpian world politics, up is down and there is no gravity?
Well, as you know, there's such a small number of seats likely to be competitive, and the incumbent party is likely to have more money. And Trump's political operation wants to keep control. Given the map, they're unlikely to take. Democrats are unlikely to take the Senate. So, I think they could defy history. Not predicting it. History would suggest the Democrats will take back control. If you're on here and you don't like Trump and you want the Democrats to win the White House in 28 and win in the midterms in 26, I'd urge you to think about three things. Okay. Number one, Trump is popular not because he's a liar. He's popular because he espouses views that are popular, positions that are popular. And they're popular not with just the extreme MAGA base. They're popular with lots of people who secretly voted for Trump. So that's number one. Trump is popular because he talks about things that are popular. Number two, Trump is not stupid. Trump is really smart. He's got high human intelligence. He's not smart in every way, but don't think you're competing against someone who's really stupid, because not. He's really smart. And lastly, the Democratic Party has to decide what it stands for. Okay? It's easy to say we need to talk to working class people and we need to have economic policies that are really relevant to the real lives of real people. Okay? There weren't dumb people on Joe Biden's economic team. They're very smart people. And they saw the polling data for 3 years saying people don't like what we're talking about on the economy. And they couldn't come up with anything that fit that category. So is it automatic that Democrats will take back the House because they'll be the out party and Trump will be unpopular? Trump is inheriting some pretty good situation here. He may be inheriting a war in Ukraine that both sides are ready to end. He may be inheriting a Middle East situation where Iran is so defanged that can be resolved. Inflation is headed down. Growth seems to be doing okay. There's a lot going right that Trump's inheriting. So I think probably, if I ask me to say today, of course, Democrats are favored to take back the House, but I don't think it's a sure thing. And I'll say again to Democrats, if you think it's automatic, no, you have to say, here's what our party stands for in the economy that's better than what Trump stands for. And I don't see that right now. And as I said, the Biden people had 3 years to come up with it, and they came up with nothing.
I'm not certain you're right that inflation is coming down. I certainly hope it is, but I've read some stuff that makes me wonder. But
It may not be, but it might.
yeah. So who are your three? Give me your expectation, top three likeliest Democrat nominees in 2028. And then, in your opinion, who would be the most formidable Democrat nominee in 2028?
Um, Josh Shapiro, Gavin Newsom, and Ro Khanna, and none of them are formidable currently.
So, who would be formidable if the Dems want to win back the White House and they were going to put themselves in your hands? Who's out there that you know right now that you think, because Trump's not on the ballot anymore,
Yeah.
he may have the Reagan '88 effect, but uh, who should they put forward to win?
Michael Bennett.
I think Senator Bennett would be a great president. It's interesting if you think he'd be a great candidate. He might be. I've not
I don't know that he'd be a great candidate for the nomination. I think he'd be a great general election candidate.
certainly a lot. He's very appealing. I didn't know if it's us Eastern elitists who like him so much, but he's an impressive
He's
guy.
he's from Colorado. He's not Eastern.
All right, so we're turning now to the last category, worldwide of news. You are building what the world I see changing. People don't trust mass media, but they trust the Substacks they read. They trust the podcasts they listen to. The media readership has massively atomized. And maybe just because I am a subscriber, I'm a paying member of concierge coverage. The things that you're doing, I find smart and pretty cutting edge. And it'd be great if you would explain the constituent elements. There's two-way, there's a Substack that's apparently free, but there's also the concierge. Explain the various pieces you've got going for people who are perhaps interested in following you more closely.
All right, so I have two businesses now that Bruce is talking about, and they're similar in the following sense. They're based on the premise from an editorial point of view that people are more interested in trusted people than in trusted news brands. They want people they recognize because they want the human connection. But they also can say, I could read 10 New York Times stories and for three of them could be good and seven of them could be crap. But I know everything that Mark Halperin does is going to be good, or everything that Jonathan Swan does is going to be good. So concierge coverage is something I do by myself. It's just me. I have no overhead. I have no employees or colleagues or bosses. I write a daily newsletter every day, 7 days a week, and I do Zooms with people who are players in politics and who speak frankly. They're not partisan. There's no one attacks anybody else. It's simply factual and based on trying to give people an insider's understanding of what's going on and to look forward about what's likely to happen next. The newsletter and the concierge coverage is very expensive. Politico has about 110 political reporters. You can read their content for free. I'm one guy. My content costs $3,600 a year for the Luigi tier and $4,800 a year for the Mario tier. My son is 8, so that's for him. Uh, that's very expensive. It's probably the most expensive political coverage in the country, but it's a very thriving business because there are people who pay that because they don't find there's a product to replace my insights, analysis, reporting on American politics and news. That's one business. So that's a yearly subscription to that product. And again, the reason it's successful is Bruce can't get my coverage any other way. He'd say, well, I don't need to read Mark Halperin. I'll read the Wall Street Journal and I'll read the New York Times because they're cheaper. Bruce and my members don't feel and they like the community around my Zooms. They like to be able to come on and say, here's Bill Bradley, and here's Newt Gingrich, and here's Susie Wiles, and they're not screaming and yelling, and they're not being asked to speak in sound bites, hour, 90-minute long conversations that are very thorough. That's one business. And again, the reason that business succeeds is because of the concept of super fans. People who are super fans will pay more than other people because they are a super fan of that person. My other business is called Two Way. That is a business with investors. We just closed our first round at $4 million and we'll start a second round relatively soon. That business is based on live video conversations that are long, sophisticated, authentic, and build community. And it can be around an author, a musician. It could be around kids with the same childhood disease. It could be around people who love the same shampoo. Live conversations that exist either free on YouTube or with a very high price point. Because what we're monetizing in a variety of ways, but our core monetization is through superfan payments. Community is really important. Community built through live video is we think the best way to build community. There's nothing quite like what we're doing. There's analogs to little pieces of it. But it's all based on people. People want to be not just associated with someone they like, someone whose music they like, or whose writing they like, or whose political views they like, but they want to be part of a community of like-minded people who share that same passion or that same interest. That business is up and running. I do two shows a day, one at 9 a.m. Eastern Time called The Morning Meeting with Sean Spicer and a guy named Dan Turntine, who's a Democratic strategist. It's modeled on what the network news divisions do. Every morning they have a meeting where they run through the day book of what's happening that day in politics in Washington, around the world, and then they talk about it. And then we take questions from the community. It's like talk radio, but it's live video, and it allows people to be in a long conversation. Again, long, two notches more sophisticated than you'd see on ESPN for sports or business for CNBC, and inclusive, community building, authentic conversations.
So for attendees here, as I always, when I share the video from this conversation, I'll include links that Mark supplies so that people who want to follow up know how and where to go on them. Speed round, Mark, because we've got 3 minutes. The when do you wake up and put the newsletter together? Are you a plan the week, plan the month kind of guy? Or are you an on the fly guy?
I've written it about 2,100 days in a row, including weekends, and I can't do it the same time every day. I wrote it last 2 weeks in Spain. That was good, +6. I'm on the fly. I get up different times every day. Some days I'll go to the gym, some days I won't. Before I write, it varies every day.
Curious about the incoming. How many hours a week do you have getting spun by the campaigns, by the White House, by the Hill, by business folks trying to shape the coverage?
I'm at the point in my career where people aren't really trying to spin me too often. It probably happens once a month. I've had good conversations, texts, emails with people, but I wouldn't really consider it being spun. And it's a two-way street. I reach out to people, they reach out to me, but I've got good enough relationships in both parties. I think that people respect my time as I respect theirs, and so I'm not really being spun so much as informed, I think, typically.
Next to last, who do you read that you find valuable, interesting? A point I made in my Substack called Resolutions. One of them is to everybody to balance your media diet. If you're all right of center, look for some left of center who are smart. You don't have to agree with them, but who make you think. If you're all politics, look at business, look at finance, look at media or other things that are interesting and different. Who do you feel like each week you're looking forward to reading, even if it's not directly relevant to these businesses that you're building?
Well, in my relevant to my business, Peggy, who you mentioned, Peggy Noonan, Joe Klein, I read everything, both of them, right? I'm just a very adept user of Google News and of X. So I see a lot of stuff in sports and culture, in international relations. So people like Peggy and Joe, I read every day, but otherwise I'm just looking for the best stuff, regardless of who wrote it.
How's your dad? I got to
My
work for
dad's
him. I was his summer intern in 1990.
My dad's doing great. He's working on his memoirs, which I'm helping him with, which
Oh,
is
cool.
incredibly fascinating. He's worked in Washington since he worked in the Johnson Pentagon, and then the Nixon White House, and he's never left D.C. And he's just had an incredible career where he was involved in a lot of really significant public policy fights. And I'm looking forward for helping him get a publisher and get the book published so we can go on a book tour together. And he's in great health and he loves his grandchildren.
I'm super excited to read his memoirs. I do not expect to show up in the index because while I did, I may have gotten his lunch or delivered something or written a good draft. I don't belong there. Mark, really appreciate your time. This was we got to 19 of my 20 questions, but I skipped one because you kind of got it into an answer. So effectively, you answered all 20. Um, Keep doing the great and smart work that you're doing. And hopefully, some of the folks here will be interested in figuring out how they can also follow you. But thanks for making the
Okay.
time.
I appreciate the opportunity. And if you're interested in either of my businesses, you can feel free to reach out. Bruce can share my information, and grateful for the audience and the opportunity, and always like talking to any Mehlman.